Welcome to the 2020 Sprout Harvest Dinner. I'm Matt, and this is my son Max. My dish that I'm going to prepare for you today, and you can follow along with your box of ingredients, is going to be a local chicken, and that's from Native Organics. We're going to stuff the chicken with mushrooms that I get from Pine River. It's strictly mushrooms, and some smoked provolone cheese. And we're going to put it over a succotash. And the succotash is a mixture of ingredients that I got from Cherries in Staples, Minnesota. And it's all hydroponically grown produce. That's kind of the feature of my presentation today, is some of his stuff. So I'm going to pepper that in with a couple other local ingredients and stuff from our own garden. So I guess really quick, I'll just go over my mise en place, and I'm going to bring them into frame here. These are the beautiful mushrooms that I got from Strictly Mushrooms in Pine River. These are oyster mushrooms, and they have quite a variety of mushrooms that they grow there and they supply us with. These are beautiful. Hate to even cut them up and saute them, they just look gorgeous. I have the chicken in front of me from Native Organics. We're going to cut this chicken up, and then I'm going to show you a couple different ways to proceed with that. I have potatoes in front of me. These happen to be fingerling potatoes from our kitchen. Green beans, a variety of peppers, hydroponic basil, that's from Staples, Minnesota. Some of this produce came from St. Matthias Farm. These are yellow zucchini and little patty pan squash. These are all going to go in the succotash. I have some garlic, some more basil, more decorative stuff. This is from our garden. We have Thai basil, opal basil, different purple basils, cherry tomatoes, and the farm in Staples also has these cherry tomatoes. Onions, corn, and I have some hominy. That's going to go in the succotash as well. So there's a lot of things in front of me. We're also going to make a pesto from the basil, and I'm going to show you how to do that very quickly and simply, and give you a couple tricks for that as well. So when you get the whole chicken, I cut the legs off here, cut right down the backbone, and I'm going to cut the chicken off the rib cage here, like so. What do you think of that, Max? Looks nice? So I have one breast there. Then I'm going to clean the next breast off. This will obviously be enough for 2 people, the breasts alone. 4 people if you use the legs, and we might do that too. So I have 2 breasts here. Now if I'm going to cut the legs off, this may or may not be in the recipe, but I'm going to do it anyway. I just kind of wanted to show you. So I have 2 legs, and now I have this carcass. And what I did with this carcass is I started with a chicken stock. So I put this in the pot with cold water, and I added celery, carrots, and onions. That's a French mirepoix. It's about 50% onion, 25% carrot, 25% celery traditionally. But you can cheat a little bit and add what you want. I put this in the pot, I season the chicken carcass, add cold water, add my vegetables, and bring it up really, really slow. Never let it boil, because you don't want to pull the impurities out of the carcass. At the very end of the cooking time, so this is something you're going to want to start ahead of time if you choose to do it. You're going to want to add herbs, peppercorns. You could add some of the stems from some of these plants. You could add rosemary and thyme, and that'll be a very simple chicken stock that you can use in a multitude of ways, and I'll show you as we go. So I kind of did that ahead of time. I started and made a chicken stock with this carcass. Now it takes about 5 hours to do a proper chicken stock. You can accelerate that, do it a little quicker if you want, and use it as you go. So with that chicken stock, when it's done, you can actually reduce that into a syrup if you want, and have these little nuggets that you can freeze. Put it in your refrigerator or freezer at home, pull them out when you want them, add them to a sauce, and get a lot more flavor and more bang for your buck here. So we're going to cook with the breasts, and the breasts are kind of in this recipe of the stuffed chicken breast with the berries, cherries, succotash. But for these legs, we could fry these up, we could bake them. I could marinate these in a similar fashion that I'm going to do the breasts. But here's another fun thing to do with chicken legs and thighs that I love to do. It's a simple thing to do. But if you take the chicken and you season them up, and you can even do it a day ahead of time, just salt and pepper. Marry it with garlic, herbs. You can put stems of some of the stuff out of your garden in here. And then you just cover it with oil, and you just use a regular olive oil. And then if you put your chicken legs in the oil, and if you can fit 8, 10 of them, the more you can do, the better, because these are going to last quite a long time. So what you want to do is submerge them in oil, put them over your stovetop, and bring it up very slowly so that the oil never boils. Once it's just at a simmering point, keep it that way, and you can cook it for 8 hours to overnight if you want to. Cover it. The next day, this is called cooking confit, but I'm cheating a bit because this isn't its own fat, but I'm using olive oil. You are going to definitely flavor this oil from the chicken when you're done. And now you're going to have confit chicken legs. And this meat will pull apart and be the best chicken you've ever had in your life. It's a common technique with duck and duck legs and thighs that we use here at the restaurant. In that case, we do use duck fat, and we cook with its own fat. I've done this with chicken legs and added sesame oil, ginger, garlic, scallion, some Asian ingredients, and you have like an Asian confit, and it's the best tasting meat you'll ever have. That's something fun and unique and different to do with the duck legs and thighs. It does require a fair amount of oil, but you can reuse that oil again. If you do this properly, if you were to cure these legs, even for a week, even 2 weeks, and you're in salt, sugar, and a variety of different spices, you could confit this, and then when it's done, keep it in the oil, and it'll last for months under that oil, in the absence of oxygen. So something to think about. We have our chicken breast here, and probably for this recipe, I'll cut the skin off. You can fry up the skin. Obviously, it's got good flavor, but in this case, I'm just going to pull it off. So Max, do you mind grabbing me some mushrooms? I'm going to saute some mushrooms and onions up really quick to put in our chicken breasts. So I'm going to get this going. And this is Smoothie sunflower oil. That's out of Piers that we use to saute. Don't need a lot. A little goes a long way. I'm just going to make some caramelized onions very quickly to go inside of our chicken breasts. And I'm going to marry that with some of these wonderful mushrooms from Strictly Mushrooms. Really quickly, if you're doing this at home and following along, you can chop like this, and notice my blade doesn't leave the board. Notice how I'm choking up on my knife. Hold it properly. Lift your knife, you can do this if you want. And I'm just going to use half that onion. I'm going to get my oil very, very hot before I add these onions. Meanwhile, over here I'm going to take some of these mushrooms, and I'll probably just pick off the tops. I can use these bases for different things. They're a little bit woody and hard as you get down to the bottom, so these make perfect mushroom stock or a mushroom broth. You can chop them up and stew them up a little bit and make stuffings and things like that. But so I definitely will save these. So I have these oyster mushrooms. I'm going to try to bring the pan to you. See the smoke coming off? That's when I'm going to add my onion. And I'm going to add those first over a high flame. Every time I put something in the pan, I want to season it with salt. And just a little bit to flavor the onions and bring their natural flavors out. I'm going to try to make this a one-pot method, so we're going to do a variety of things in this saute pan. And I'm going to remove them, hold them aside, and keep using the same pan so you don't have to keep switching pans out every time. So I'm sauteing my onions. I think a little garlic would go good in there. I have this garlic bulb, and if you just peel off one clove, go like that, and then the peels come off. So you can use that if you want. I have some different herbs, and I have some roasted garlic you can put in there. Here's one clove of garlic, and I'm just going to mince it kind of fine. This is sliced. You may not want garlic in your recipe, and if you don't, just omit it. I'm going to put it on top of the onion so it doesn't burn. So you can see the caramelization starting on this. They're starting to get brown, and I'm bringing the natural sugars off of the onion. The fond, or the caramelization stuck to the pan, is something I'm going to get off, and I'll show you how to do that. So the onions are turning sweeter and sweeter, and now I'm going to add my mushrooms so that they also cook in time. Those go right on top. Once again, I added something to my pan, so I'm going to season with salt. I'll put a little pepper on these as well. And now when you're sauteing something, you're always tempted to move the pan around. But that just introduces steam and cools your pan down and doesn't allow you to get proper caramelization on your food for better flavor. So let's leave the pan alone. You don't need to get a big flame up to here. That's for TV and for demonstration purposes only. Makes your food taste like gasoline. So you just want to make your product sit in the pan. When you feel it's getting caramelized and brown on one side, then you can start moving it around a bit. It won't take long to do these mushrooms or get this flavor out. You can already get caramelization on the mushrooms. And they are going to bake in the oven too with the chicken, so they will continue to cook that way too. So it's not like we're going to cook these to death or anything. Just a little bit of time in the pan is sufficient. Time to flip. You can see the color on there. Spread it out amongst the surface area of your pan to make sure you can caramelize everything properly. Don't group it all into one pile. Spread it out. Make sure there's negative space in there in between your product so that you have maximum heat to achieve this as quick as possible and to get your cut like these. So while that's going, I have my chicken breast here, and I'm going to cut a pocket in both of them. So just take, this is a slicing knife. Notice I have my hand kind of flat, and I'm just cutting a pocket on the side. And I'll do the same thing with this one. You can start from the thickest end if you want. This is the tenderloin on the bottom here. We'll keep that attached. So just cut a pocket. Careful not to cut yourself, obviously. Inside, we'll put a little salt, just a little bit, a little pepper. And then in this recipe also, I have some sliced smoked provolone cheese. And that's going to give a satiating quality and keep it moist inside. So that's going to be really important to have. You don't have to use smoked cheese. You don't have to use provolone. You can use goat cheese if you want, mozzarella, something like that. Even add some Parmesan in here. I do have Parmesan. I was going to make a pesto with. Here's the Parm. That would go perfect in there. Just add a little fat, and fat is flavor. So my mushrooms are going. I got good color on them. See that? And that's what I wanted. Now I have some wine. Max, did you take the cork off the top for me? Add a little bit of wine in there, just about, I'll tell you when to stop. A little more. Alright. So I'm deglazing my pan. I'm taking the fond off with a little bit of acid and getting that flavor back up into the food where it belongs. Okay? And that should do it. Just like that. Okay? Now I'm going to add some of these mushrooms and onions into the center of my chicken with the cheese. So I have onions, cheese, and we'll continue to use the same pan. Now I'm going to close these up. And we're going to sear these, but then I'm going to make a pesto aioli to put on top and bake that. I'm going to show you how to do that. We'll season the tops. Salt and pepper. Back on the heat, we'll put a little bit more of the oil. And I just want to brown and caramelize at least this top section. Okay, once again we got proper heat. You can see some of the steam coming off. These are going to go in presentation side down. Sear it in the oil just for color. Now I have my chicken stock going here. I have a few ingredients here that are kind of dense. They're going to require a lot more cooking time than some of the other stuff that's going to cook really quick and rapidly. So I can put some of these potatoes in my stock. Notice I have a china cap in there so I can pull them out at ease. Once my potatoes are pretty much fully cooked, I can remove those. That's going to take, if your stock is just at a simmer, about 10 to 15 minutes. Depends on the size of your potato, obviously. You can also put some green beans in there, and I'll probably do that toward the end of the cooking time when the potatoes are almost done. I'll throw these in for maybe the last couple minutes. I don't want to cook these army green and mushy. Not so pleasant. I want to keep bright, vibrant colors going here. You can see what's happening here. I'm already getting good color on my chicken, and you can see that. That's my goal. Okay? Max, would you hand me that pan right there and hold it for me? Hold it really tight with both hands. I got good color here. I can briefly see how beautiful that is. I can briefly sear the bottom, and then I'm going to reserve these like so. And you can put that on the counter there, Max. Now once again, I'm reserving this pan, and if you need to clean it out, go ahead. But I'm going to keep adding different ingredients here that are going to make my succotash sort of come to life. So what's a succotash? Basically, think of it as a bunch of fresh ingredients thrown together. It was popularized in the South, especially during the Great Depression. How apropos to start pulling the Great Depression and recipes out with everything going on. Hopefully we don't ever get to that degree. But it's everything fresh from the farm kind of thrown into one pot. Many times they put pie crusts on them and bake them in casseroles. This is just going to be a loose version of a succotash. I'm not going to have lima beans in my succotash. I'm not going to have okra. I'm going to put things in this succotash that tend to be in succotash. So sweet corn would be starting to become very seasonal now. I'm adding hominy just because I like the nuttiness and the flavor of it, and it's got also its unique texture. these tomatoes. I'll probably slip a few sun-dried tomatoes in there just for another taste sensation. I want all of this to kind of swim together in one pot, retain each ingredient's integrity to make it taste really good. Every time I take a bite of the succotash, I want to be experiencing something different, texture-wise and flavor-wise. Color and aroma is also going to come out too. So, we'll do that in a second. I'm going to show you how to make a very quick pesto, and we're going to mix it with aioli. Now, an aioli is simply a garlic mayonnaise. If you took mayonnaise and added chopped garlic to it, you have an aioli. A typical pesto would have pine nuts, but I'm going to use walnuts. They're much cheaper. It is going to add some flavor and texture, but for the purposes of this recipe, pine nuts wouldn't stand out anyway. Unless you had them and wanted to use them as garnish, they would fit perfectly. Whenever you cook with any kind of nuts, you pre-toast them, but just slightly in your oven to bring out the flavor. By the way, at some point we're going to put the chicken, we're going to coat it, we're going to put it in the oven. I have my oven at 375 degrees preheated. So I have a low wind on there, so it's probably cooking close to 400 degrees. So I'm going to put some walnuts in here. And this is more than enough for the recipe here. The good news is we'll make a certain amount of pesto here. You can freeze this in Ziploc bags and always have lined up pestos of many different kinds in your freezer if you want. I'll have one garlic clove and a small handful of Parmesan. Now I'll use some of Barry's hydroponic basil, and I got a little tip and a little secret. So I'm going to put this basil in here, and this is a very quick version of a pesto. All you need is a food processor. It smells great. Max, you want to put a couple basil leaves inside the chickens, kind of open the chickens. So I have my basil in here, just a small pinch of salt. This is spinach, and I'll use equal parts spinach with the basil, and the purpose of that is for a couple of reasons. Basil can be quite expensive, especially if you're buying it. So this is going to stretch it out because typically in your pesto you have such strong flavors. You have garlic, the basil, if it's fresh, is going to be very potent. This will give you more bang for your buck. Also, when you make a pesto, many times it turns army green, especially on the top, especially if it's sitting in your refrigerator covered even. It'll turn that green color. Spinach has more chlorophyll in it, so it's going to bring you that vibrant green color and keep it that way longer. So it's a great addition to a pesto. I'll make it with Smoothie's sunflower virgin, extra virgin olive oil, or sunflower oil. I'm going to start it. I'm going to slowly drizzle in the oil, maybe a quarter cup max. Stop it. We'll scrape down our sides here. And go again. Now this is a quick pesto. See? It's still a little bit shreddy and grainy here, but that's okay. I am now going to add some aioli to make it more of a sauce. This is garlic mayonnaise, and you can even add about the same amount of garlic mayonnaise as you have pesto in your bowl. Only add the garlic mayonnaise if you're going to use it. I wouldn't freeze that portion of it, only the pesto if you're going to do that. Start it up again. Max, you want to taste? dip. Good? Yeah, really good. So there's our sauce, very quick. It's gonna coat our chicken. Take our chickens. We're gonna put this right on top. Just kind of let it sit on top. Let it fall into the ingredients a little bit. And then you can take some of the Parmesan if you still have some and even layer that on top. That's going to go in a 375 to 400 degree oven. Let's put it in. Set it for 10 minutes. Meanwhile, let's make a quick succotash.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie. I work at Braised, Cherries out in Staples, Minnesota. We are a hydroponic farm. Everything that we grow is done hydroponically. We grow lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers, and a whole host of other things. I'm actually standing in our tomato house right now, and as you can see, they're taller than I am already. We grow for sprout. We also supply the Staples School District and a few of the co-ops in the area, as well as the hospital here in town. For us, this farm is important because it is good, safe, locally grown produce, which is something that is sometimes very hard to find.
So for our succotash, we'll start, I think, with just a section of onion. And this will all be in your kit. Any of these ingredients you can cut any way you want. And I would say the bigger and the more different each cut is, the better. Let's let every product kind of stand out in its color, its shape, and its texture. So this, I just kind of diced it loosely like so. Let's kind of collect every ingredient as I'm going here. I have some peppers. Next, I'm going to give you some trash. Let's cut these kind of large, like so. Maybe put a couple different colors in here. This one we can cut in a different way. We can keep these in strips, like so. Got to have a little orange in there. Maybe we'll dice these. Okay, that looks delish. Yellow zucchini. Maybe I'll cut it in half lengthwise, and I'll just cut it in sections like that. Now we're going to briefly saute these all in one pot. So this is going to taste, I think, really, really good. These patty pans from St. Matthias Farm, let's cut those in half if they're small. If they're larger, I can maybe cut them in sixths, like so. That'll be delish. The cherry tomatoes, we can just throw in there just the way they are, whole, or we can slightly cut them. There's some pretty different colors we can throw in. We can cut them in half. These will go in at the very end. Color and flavor is retained. Put a couple whole ones in there maybe. We'll put a few sun-dried tomatoes in at the very end. Maybe some roasted garlic in at the very end. We're going to put corn and hominy in also. And I pre-cooked some potatoes. The potatoes that I put in here. And I also put some beans in there to take place of the lima beans, just some fresh beans from the farm. So this is all going to go in our succotash, and that's going to make one delicious dish, in my opinion, and it's going to be very summery, very light, not heavy starch. We have some potatoes here, but to me in the summer when it's hot, it's not time for pasta or risotto, something hot. You can have those things in small quantities. I want to eat fresh from the farm, and all these ingredients are just kind of screaming at you to use them the way they were grown and as close to that way as possible. So let's do that. I'm going to wipe out quickly my pan. We're going to bring the heat back up again. I'm going to add the smoothies oil once more. Maybe a little bit more this time. My potatoes are already fully cooked. I took them out right when they're just done, so they're a little bit hard right now, but not much. I want to be able to sear and caramelize the bottom of it. So I'm going to put those in there when the pan is hot. I'm putting them the cut side down. Let's put the patty pan squash in and the onions, because those are also a bit dense. And I want to get flavor on these onions. So I'll throw the onions in, and I'm going to put the patty pans in and try to put those cut side down also, as best you can. The yellow zucchini is also a little bit dense. So I'm going to put that in. And make sure the oil gets to all of it. And what am I missing? Salt. Get all of it really. Salt brings out natural flavors. It's a flavor enhancer. So you want to salt everything that you can in small quantities. So once that gets going, then we're going to add some of this stuff in. And this can all go in at the very end. We'll season it, we'll taste it, keep everything as bright colored and fresh as possible. How's that look, Max? You want to move them around a bit? Just a little bit. Maybe look at them, pull them up and look at them a little bit. They look good. Now to tie these mushrooms in that we put in the stuffing, let's put a little bit of those in the mix too so that you can see them, because they're so beautiful. Maybe we'll put the top caps in so that you can see the whole mushroom. And we'll throw those in there now too. Okay, so I'm getting some color on these. See, I got some nice golden color on the cooked potatoes, just to give them a little bit more flavor. Now we'll add the rest so let's put the beans in. We'll put our beans inside. We'll put our peppers, some of them. Some of the green, some of the orange ones. That's the next densest product. So we'll put a little bit of salt on that. And we'll let those cook a little bit. And then finally, we'll finish with the tomatoes, the sun-dried tomatoes. I have a little roasted garlic and the corns that are already cooked. While these are sauteing, I can use my chicken stock and kind of add that to the pan. And that stock will get more and more and more intense and add just another great layer of flavor to that. It'll turn into a syrup. It'll take the fond off the pan and get all those flavors moving around again. I could add an acid like a wine also again, but that might kill the color of the produce, and I don't want to do that. That looks delicious. stock in there. Try to do it in small enough quantities that you can reduce it and reduce it and reduce it. So it's almost like glaze on top of everything when it's done. You can taste it again. Tastes fresh. Okay, now time to put in hominy. Sun-dried tomatoes, roasted garlic, fresh tomatoes, and sweet corn. Salt. Looks like I'm putting a lot of salt in, but I'm not. I'm just salting the ingredients, not the dish. Now we can mix it all. How's that look? You eat that? Don't eat it. Now what we could do to tie in some of the flavors is take some of the basil. We have Thai basil and we have local basil from our garden. Maybe slice it nicely. You don't need a lot because it's got a pretty powerful flavor, and you got the pesto aioli on top of the chicken. So you can just sprinkle that in if you want. Taste your succotash. Does it need any more herbs? Does it need salt? Does it need pepper? Probably pepper. You could finish with either smoothie sunflower oil. I have some extra virgin olive oil. That would be really good on top. Let's see if these are done. I just put those in the oven. Those are about a minute away from being ready. A minute. 1 minute. So let's arrange now our product onto the platter. This looks delicious. Make sure I get a little bit of everything. All the beautiful colors. All the beautiful flavors. Max, are you eating some of this too? Yeah. Awesome. What about another cherry tomato? That looks great. Now the chicken breast you can slice and put on top if you want. Missing mushrooms. There's some more mushrooms. Don't be afraid to take away some of these ingredients or add in some of your own. You're the chef, so kind of make this mix the way you want it to be. Make it taste the way you want it to taste. Chicken goes on top. Then, if you want, you can use either some of the aioli as a sauce, a little bit extra. You can spoon some on, so you can dip in it if you want. If you want just some extra flavor. You can use just regular pesto and use that as the sauce if you want. So that dish right in front of you right there is probably a $17 dish. Now it's a $20 dish. So, some basil, stuffed chicken, local mushrooms, berries, cherries, succotash, all fresh flavors. Hope you enjoy it. Give us some feedback. Thank you very much for watching.
welcome to the 2020 Scout Harvest Dinner.